Real stories of werewolves, of Dogman from history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Dogman versus Bigfoot in my pool. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I saw two monsters one summer night when I was sleeping over my cousin Vito's house in eastern Pennsylvania. We were in a small town just a few miles to the northwest of Philadelphia, which is not really supposed to be prime territory for either Dogman or Bigfoot sightings. The event that Vito and I witnessed was one that I failed to film with my Super 8 camera, but it will stay alive in my memory for however much longer God allows me to live among you kind people. If you haven't figured it out by now, my story happened a very long time ago. It was either 1973 or it was 1974, I think. That would have made me and Vito either 13 or 14 years old when this all happened. I was staying over for 2 or 3 weeks that summer, and on this night, Vito's parents had driven a long way off to attend a friend's birthday party or anniversary party or something like that. They weren't going to get back till 3 or 4 in the morning, and there was a chance they might just sleep over at the party, then drive back the following day. Since it was Saturday night, that meant Vito and I could watch the Saturday night scary movies all night. This was before computers and cell phones and so forth, and chiller theater and creature feature movies on TV were the most exciting things that happened in our 13 or 14-year-old lives. We were watching a weird movie about Barbara Steele and a castle. I've never seen that one a second time. I can't recall too much about it. Although we both liked Barbara Steele, neither of us were getting into this movie. We were more interested in monsters than psychological horror or whatever this was. We wanted to see The Mummy or Frankenstein or something like that. Because the movie wasn't holding our interest, but it was creating a creepy vibe and mood, we sort of turned the audio up to listen to the soundtrack and wandered around Vito's parents' house. I forget the details, but they were not exactly the owners of the place, or something like that. It really belonged to some older relative maybe, or possibly the owners had passed away. I can't really recall exactly, it was 50 years ago. My point is that there was a lot of old stuff that belonged to earlier generations all around us in that house. I don't know that the place was haunted, in fact I don't think it was, but it sure looked like it should be. Everything in that house was an antique. It felt like we were on the Dark Shadows TV show. Although the inside of the house dated back a long way, they had an in-ground swimming pool in the back that looked like it was maybe 10 years old at the oldest. That was where Vito and I spent a lot of time that summer, which I remember being a hot one. At one point I was coming back from getting snacks in the kitchen when I looked out the window and I saw something that made me drop what I was holding and run back upstairs. I locked Vito's bedroom door and I turned the sound down on his TV. Then I cautiously led him to the window and silently pointed down to the swimming pool in the backyard. There was something drinking water from the edge of the pool. Something big and brown and down on all fours. I mean really big. Vito took one look, gasped, and said, "Oh, water buffalo." It wasn't a water buffalo, but I couldn't tell him what it was. The brown furry thing was down on all fours and leaning over into the pool to drink water. I was thinking that it might be a large dog. It was the size of a bear, but the fur was not the same as a bear's fur. At least not the bears I had seen when my parents took me to see Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey's circus. This fur was longer and darker and more matted and gross looking. When that thing finished drinking, it sort of leaned back and lifted its head up, which was shaped like a dog or wolf head. Vito called it a muscle-bound jackal, which stuck in my head all these years. I didn't know what a jackal looked like, but I just thought it sounded cool, muscle-bound jackal. So the thing sort of howled briefly. Then it did the strangest thing I could ever imagine. This four-legged creature leaned back and sort of tipped itself upright, so that it was now standing up on its hind legs like a man. And once it was back on those hind legs, now towering up in the air, it let loose with an even longer, even louder, even more mournful howl. This wolf howled like he was singing the blues or something. I wondered who a giant beast like that could be howling to. Would his howling attract another creature as large as he was? Would his howling attract something even larger? But as we watched and as I wondered these things, his howl was interrupted as another large figure leaped into view and tackled the wolfman around his midsection. The force of the impact sent both creatures crashing and splashing into the water, a huge wave of which rose out of the pool and fell onto the grass lawn beyond it. When the foam and water settled, we saw two creatures down below, submerged in the water up to their shoulders, facing each other, grimacing and baring their teeth. They glared at each other as though they were old enemies. They did not seem surprised to see each other. But my cousin Vito and I, well, we were pretty freaking surprised to see both of them. At this point, we were scrambling through Vito's closet and his parents' bedroom closet, looking for cameras that might have some film left in them. My Super 8 had no batteries left. We wanted to take a picture or some 8mm film of the creatures fighting in the pool down below, but we were not finding anything that had both film and the flash. In retrospect, the flash wasn't going to help us in that context, but it was the 70s and we were kids, and we didn't really understand any of that yet. After some time of trying to find a camera that was working, but failing in the task, we retreated back to Vito's room to watch the spectacle playing out down below. So there was a lot of splashing and there was a lot of screaming, but there didn't seem to be a lot of connecting between the two of them. It was sort of like Jake Paul versus a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. A lot of fuss, but not too many blows connecting. So the second figure, the one that tackled the dog-headed one, this seemed to be a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It did not have ears up on top of its head, and although it did have a bit of a snout, which it would make longer when hooting and hollering, he did not have the long dog nose and canine fangs of the first one, the buffalo-sized dog that we saw drinking chlorine water from the pool. We were watching an ape-like creature battle something that looked and acted like a werewolf from out of legend. It didn't have clothes on. It wasn't a Lon Chaney kind of werewolf. It was too big for that. But it was a wolf-headed creature that walked like we do. Both of them were too large to be guys in costumes, and both were ripped. I mean like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, overly muscled. They were making it clear they didn't like each other, but they were really not making it very clear what they were going to do about that, other than empty half the pool water out onto the walkway and lawn. But then the werewolf picked up that net thing that was laying by the pool. I forget what they're called, but it's that thing you use to pick leaves and crap out of the water to clean the pool up. This long metal and plastic stick thing with a net at the end of it. And he swings it and whacks the Sasquatch right square on the noggin in the process while he does so. Crack! And that Bigfoot, he started making a sound like a baby crying. I'm not even kidding. He sounded like a crying baby. And the next thing you know, he just sort of disappeared in a flash of light. Like zoot. And then there was only one monster in the pool down below. Nobody believes us with that part of the story, but the Bigfoot did not run away. He sort of lit up bright and then disappeared. Vito and I screamed when we saw this. I mean, it was a shocking thing to see. You would have probably shouted a bit as well. But the thing is, when we made all that noise, that werewolf or dogman, the one still left in the pool down below, the original buffalo-sized animal we had seen drinking from the pool, well, he turned his head. He looked right up at us in our window. That shut us up inside of 1 second, and we found ourselves staring down at the wolfman, who was staring right back up at us. I have nightmares about this moment. It felt like we were standing there forever. Literally for all of time. The dogman's eyes looked like they had living flames inside of them. I felt like, by the way it was looking at me, that it was telling me that it had come from hell, and that it wanted to bring someone back home with it. We might still be there staring at that thing's eyes to this day, a half-century later, but the beast broke our stare and began running toward the base of the house. We could hear sounds below, and we both got the impression that the dogman was attempting to scale or climb the outside of the house itself in order to get up at us in Vito's bedroom. We ran out into the hallway and for some reason chose a closet to hide inside of. We heard sounds outside for a long while, but we couldn't tell for sure if the wolfman had gotten into the house or not. For this reason, we stayed inside that closet in the hallway, trying to get some rest in cramped quarters until Vito's wristwatch said it was 6 a.m. When we opened that closet door, I wasn't sure what we were going to see. Did the monster get inside? Did it trash the place? Would it still be inside waiting for us? Well, first peek out into the hallway looked pretty ordinary. When we got up our courage, we checked Vito's room, which was no messier than usual. His window seemed intact and did not look broken into. Heading downstairs, we found the pool really had been half emptied of its water the night before. We had not hallucinated the monster fight. It had to have really happened. And there was some digging over by the base of the house under Vito's window, so I guess the creature had actually tried to get into the house. But instead of climbing up to the window as we had expected him to do, I guess maybe he tried to dig under the house? Well, dogman gonna dog, as they say. Actually, nobody says that. So we did tell people about what happened, but we were both kids who were into monsters. We were kids who were known to fantasize a lot. We knew very little of math or science, yet we knew all about Godzilla and the creature from the Black Lagoon. So our female relatives told us to be quiet about it, while our male relatives humored us, as though we were telling fish stories. Pretty soon after that, Vito and I shifted our interests to girls and women, so we kind of dropped the monster stuff on our own. In those days, ladies didn't want to hear you talking about Bigfoot or Dogman. Maybe they still don't, I wouldn't know. For decades, I didn't want to talk about this because I was trying hard to seem sane and get along in the world. And now I'm old, though, and I just don't care how crazy people might think I am anymore. Maybe I'm just a nutty old boomer like this guy on Facebook called me last week. But I'm a nutty old boomer who once saw a Bigfoot fighting a dogman in my cousin Vito's swimming pool in eastern Pennsylvania. Dogman versus Bigfoot in my hot tub. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got a weird story for you about the time I saw two cryptids at the same time. This was way back in the 1990s in northern Michigan. I don't remember exactly where. It was a house I rented as a winter getaway for me and this girl that I'd been seeing. It had a hot tub outside in the snow, and we'd have to run about 20 feet through that snow to get to it, and then the same to get back to the house. Of course, running back to the house, we'd be warm from the hot tub and hardly feeling it, but running from the house through the snow barefoot could be quite invigorating, to say the least. So one night we were getting into our bathing suits to go sit in the hot tub when my girlfriend walked outside, screamed, and ran back inside. She slammed the door behind her and was hyperventilating and finding it impossible to speak words that made any sense to me. After some time, she told me that there was a giant bear in the hot tub, and I was like, holy free holy, you know? So I led her upstairs and we found a window overlooking the hot tub to see what was happening. What we saw was not one bear down there, but two. They seemed to have different colored fur. They were very agitated, and they were standing up on their hind legs. Both of them were making angry-sounding noises and raising their clawed paws up in the air. They were on either side of the hot tub, and that seemed to be what they were fighting over. Each of them tried to look bigger and more frightening than the other one. The two began circling the hot tub, each one waiting for the other to make some tactical error. They would bluff charge, then retreat, and neither one was dominating, yet neither one would retreat either. My girlfriend was growing agitated. She kept asking why I wasn't doing something, and I kept saying I was doing something. I was waiting, and I was observing. I asked her to explain to me what we were looking at, and she screamed at me that she didn't know what we were looking at. I was like, exactly. So let me observe what's going on, and then maybe I can understand it. Then maybe if I can comprehend what's happening, I can figure out how to resolve this. I thought I was making sense, but she went right back to screaming at me. I tried to block her out mentally, and I just looked out there at the situation. One of those creatures was like a dog-headed Bigfoot, while the other one just sort of looked like a Bigfoot. They both had fur that was different shades of brown from each other, and they both had clawed hands, as I remember it. One of them had tall dog ears, though, and it made him resemble a werewolf more than a Sasquatch. The other one had a more ape or gorilla-like head, and so I call him a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. They were so similar in size to each other. I kind of found that the most bizarre part. They were taller than bears, and nothing is supposed to exist that's their size. Yet here we were looking at two of them, as though being 10 or 11 feet tall were the normal way of nature in the late 20th century. It most definitely was and is not. What were the chances of seeing one anomaly like this, let alone two? Years later, I was talking with this native guy who told me I was near a portal on that night. I had to have been, he said. And he said that when you're near a portal, the chances of seeing one cryptid are about the same as seeing 2 or 3 or more. It isn't the same as seeing normal animals. It's a different thing entirely. These are visitors to our reality. At least that's what my native acquaintance insisted to me years after the incident. But back on the night when it was happening, those beasts seemed very real to me. My girlfriend got fed up with me waiting and watching, and she burst out of the back door and into the cold night. Standing there just outside the house, she stamped her foot and demanded the monsters go away and leave us alone. That caused them to stop posturing for each other, to stop trying to scare each other, and they both turned to look at and fixate on my girlfriend. When she realized they had gone silent, and that she had 4 glowing predator eyes focused on her, she got quiet as well, and silently backtracked into the house. She closed the door as gently and quietly as she could. Count 1, 2, then bam! Both hairy beastmen charged the back door of the house, and my girlfriend and I ran upstairs insanely. We spent that night listening to the creatures down below, banging on the walls and doors of the house. I kept waiting for the sound of breaking glass, but I never heard it. When we got up with the sun the next morning, we couldn't even find footprints of the creatures in the snow outside, and there was nothing wrecked or destroyed that we could make out. Much of the snow seemed melted much more than it should have been so quickly, but I can't really explain why that would be. At any rate, we cut the rest of our vacation short and went home to spend it in my apartment, taking hot showers together. Sure, it's more cramped than a hot tub, but the shower has one distinct advantage over a hot tub. No cryptids allowed. John Carnagan can do no wrong. You know he got it going on. Please join me in thanking John Carnagan for donating to us using our thanks button located under each of our YouTube videos. John is also a channel member, so he gets to see our secret uncensored Dogman stories, far too wild to run on this channel. To find out more about that, listen to our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.